Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns with a Players' Day off out in Berea, getting ready for the Texans down in Houston Sunday afternoon, trying to get their 10th win of the year somehow. Mina Kimes, ESPN's NFL Live, talking about the Browns dealing with numerous injuries, still finding a way to win.
The injuries, Laura, are what make it so unbelievably impressive to me. I mean, we're talking about an offensive line that is down multiple starters going up against a very underrated Bears front. To me, Stefanski, I thought, called a terrific game despite that and was able to compensate for it in a number of ways. I thought the Browns' screen game continues to be extremely effective. He was moving Flacco around, moving the launch point, and Flacco's been very good at throwing on the run. And then this is something that really jumps out to me week after week, but really I thought was excellent in this game. The play-action passing game out of the gun in particular. So it looks like a lot of the runs that they do with Kareem Hunt. Joe Flacco was able to hit explosives out of those looks, went 7 for 7 for 190 yards in this game. Play action out of the gun. That is something you're seeing this Browns offense do consistently with him, and it makes them threatening because they do have that explosive element.
Take it a step further. This from Jake Burns of the Orange and Brown Report. Joe Flacco in the second half, shotgun play action, 5 of 5, 170 yards and a touchdown. Second half is when Joe Flacco was so good. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, Joe Flacco looked like two completely different quarterbacks leading the 3 turnovers and then the touchdown drives late in the game, in the fourth quarter predominantly.
Yeah, I mean, the talk in the press box before the game was, when is the glass slipper going to break, with Joe Flacco, and is this going to be a 4-interception game? And it just seemed like that's what it was. I mean, through 3 quarters, he's 17 for 31, 162 yards, 3 interceptions, and sacked 3 times, and he just looked totally befuddled. And then he comes out in the fourth quarter, mostly in the last 5-6 minutes, and goes 11 for 13 for 212 yards, 144.4 rating, leads them 3 of 4 drives for scores, 2 field goals, and a touchdown. And it was like night and day. But I guess, you have to look at that. That's what you get with a 16-year veteran, is that at any time he can turn it on and he figures it out. And I didn't see it coming, especially when the Bears jump-started the Browns. They're down 17-7, dead in the water, and the punt returner drops the ball. Browns get the ball first down on the 20, and on the first play, Flacco throws an interception at the goal line. I mean, he gave the Bears 14 of their 17 points on interceptions and took at least 3 off the board. And so you're saying, boy, he's looking like P.J. Walker again. And then he just comes alive and everything goes right. And that's one of those things, just staying with it in the NFL. Things can turn on a dime.
Yeah, and that's why Joe Flacco gives them a chance. If they get into the playoffs, he gives them a chance to potentially beat anybody. Flacco postgame talked about the resiliency he's seen from the Browns in his time with the team.
Listen, I think it just tells you a lot about the kind of guys that this organization has, purposely picked to put on the roster and in that locker room. And I think it's one of those things that you probably can't quite quantify. But having hard workers, having tough guys, and all those things, if you're put in situations where you need to be, you need to have that resilience. Like I said, not every one of them are going to work out. So there is a little bit of probably luck involved in things like today. But I think it just speaks to the character of the guys in that room, and I think you have to give credit to the organization for probably doing that on purpose.
The line was decimated, we know that. So what were your words of encouragement in the huddle, on the sidelines?
I didn't have much. You just look at the guys and say, hey, let's go. Let's get in a groove here. Let's get back in our rhythm. Let's go get one. Stupid, simple little things to just kind of keep everybody's heads up. But I got to say, all those guys, there was never a time where we got to the sideline getting ready to go out for a drive and you saw a head down. Everybody had their eyes up and were ready to go. So, like I said, if they had a little bit of a different feeling inside and they weren't letting it be shown, and that's what you have to do in these situations. You have to trick your mind into thinking that it's not that big of a deal, even though it might be.
And Fred, the one thing you can tell, the guys on the field believe in him, and that for a guy that's your fourth quarterback, that's what you want. You can't ask for much more than having everybody in the huddle believe this guy's going to find a way to get it done.
Well, that's true. And the players, say that. And you think about it, he's 38, 39 years old. And most of these guys are, early 20s. So most of them have alluded to watching him when they were kids. They're football fans as little kids dreaming, and they're seeing Joe Flacco in the Super Bowl and all those wins with the Ravens. And he's out there with them in the field, and he's just a calming presence, in the clutch, go time. They look in his eyes and they see no fear. They see very calmness. It's almost like a Kevin Stefanski on the field because it brings such a calming presence. And they know that he's done it in the past, and they have, confidence that he's going to do it, in the present. So I just think it really is something that easily in games past, in years past, a game like last Sunday was long over, when the Browns dug that hole. But, they did what they did, and it's really hard to describe. You just see it. But I think Joe Flacco brings that to the team.
Without question. And, this surprised me when we dug this up, and I want to go back to it. Most road playoff wins in NFL history. Again, Joe Flacco has as many road playoff wins as Tom Brady, and they are the two quarterbacks who have the most, ahead of Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers. So again, it's looking like if the Browns get in, they probably will not catch the Ravens. There's still a chance they could. The Ravens have a couple of tough games. Browns would need to win out. But they're probably going to be on the road. And the guy that's playing quarterback for them has won more road playoff games than anybody.
Well, that bodes well, this week in Houston, and then the finale in Cincinnati, that you might have to win, those games, to get in the playoffs or to have a better seed. So it is. Again, I just think he's been in the eye of the storm. Obviously, the Ravens went all the way, won the Super Bowl, and you have to be in the playoffs a lot. So he has a lot of experience, just being there. And that says a lot. Here's a guy who come off the couch, signs, November 20th, and in less than a month, he set records for the Browns in their first 3 games passing. He become the most passing yards since the team returned. He passed Baker Mayfield with 939 yards in his first 3 games and 7 touchdowns. I mean, it's just incredible, that not only is he playing, but that he's setting records with his short time with the Browns.
All right, so concerns. Browns ran the ball 18 times, gained just 29 yards against the Bears on Sunday. So I know they're down a bunch of offensive linemen. Kevin Stefanski talked about Joe Flacco's mobility and improving that run game.
Oftentimes, Mary Kay, when you're talking about the marriage of the run and the pass, when you're talking about wide zone run game, that certainly opens up the keeper game and play action. So that's something that Joe is adept at. You can do it from under center. You can do it from the gun. But he's always done a nice job of that. When we look at it, Fred, we're just trying to do whatever we can to win a game. Obviously, we want to run the ball better. We want to run it more efficiently. That was a good front that we went up against yesterday. So we'll always look at it and find different ways to get the ball in our playmakers' hands, and that certainly includes our runners.
So, Fred, they haven't been able to run the ball for a few games. And in fairness, you're down 4 of your starting offensive line. The only guy that's a starter on the offensive line that was playing the majority of the Bears games is Wyatt Teller. Is there a way you can find a run game?
Yeah, that's why I asked him that question, is that is concerning. 29 yards, 1.6 yards a carry. It's amazing that you were able to win the game when they knew you couldn't run, and you're putting the ball in Joe Flacco's hands to throw it again 40, 50 times. But they have to get that more balanced. And hopefully they'll get Ethan Posick back, and hopefully they'll get Joel Bitonio back. If you just had those interior guys healthy, that gives you, a lift there. You're still without your tackles, but yeah, it's a concern. Obviously you don't have Nick Chubb, who did a lot on his own. So I think, we'll find out in these next 3 games. The Texans, they're pretty good against the run as well. I think they're 6th in the NFL. So they're going to force, Joe Flacco to throw the ball again. And until they show they can effectively move the ball on the ground, teams are going to, do what the Bears did and load up and make them beat them downfield vertically. And they did for the most part last week until, the final 5-6 minutes.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million.
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, this is Aaron coming from Los Angeles, California, a lifelong Cleveland Browns fan. Yeah, I just have a question for you guys. The Tennessee Titans, they actually released one of their best interior defensive linemen. His name is Tier Tart. Pretty good nose tackle. 26-year-old, like 6'2", 295. Really, really, really good nose tackle for them. Has been incredibly productive over the past couple of years. Given his productivity and given our, recent injury, history, it's better to have more depth than to not have more depth, especially going into the postseason, So I'm curious as to what you guys think about us potentially signing Tier Tart. All right. And as always, go Browns.
Appreciate all the voicemails. The Texans actually signed Tier Tart. They had the top priority. The Bengals and the Browns did try to claim him, but it goes in reverse order. Houston did get the claim on Tier Tart. So, Fred, again, Andrew Berry has shown that he's going to do whatever he can to improve the roster, and he's made some pretty good moves.
Yeah, he has. With that, Maurice Hurst going to injury reserve, and Oko Okoronkwo hasn't went to injury reserve, but he's got a torn pec, and I think they're holding out hope that he could play without going on injury reserve. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but yeah, they had some guys come through the other day, but you still, if you're getting into this playoff push and even for the playoffs, you want to have some guys that you can count on to do so. And you got veterans there, been there, done that. Tart was claimed. The Browns tried. I saw Justin Houston, an edge rusher, was released. We'll see if they try to bring him in. Comes down, basically to, like you said, claim priority. And the Browns, because they're 9-5, are a little further down the list. But yeah, I think they'll do what they can. At this point, there's street free agents, but there's reasons for the most part guys were unclaimed or still sitting at home. But it's good to see they're active there. I mean, you think about where this team would be possibly if Joe Flacco, wouldn't have been sitting on the couch waiting for a call. But yeah, it will be interesting. I'd be surprised if they didn't try, especially with their injury situation. But it was good to see them going after a guy that had talent like Tart, but unfortunately they didn't get him.
So they did sign a free agent who was out there. It was Chris Williams, signed to the practice squad, third season out of Wagner, 13 games, most of this season on the Chiefs practice squad again. Just a guy that, has some NFL experience. They clearly know him and have kept an eye on him. So just that happened recently. Let's take a look at the NFL power rankings, where what areas each team's rank number one, and this from ESPN.com. So power rankings, they have the 49ers 1, Ravens 2, Cowboys are 3. They have the Browns at 9, and they have Cleveland has forced 3 and outs. They're number 1 in forcing 3 and outs. More 3 and outs than any other defense in the NFL, 55. Tops in the league, a whopping 34.4% 3 and out rate. And Fred, the defense, we're running out of adjectives. I mean, they have done everything and more that you hoped the defense would do when you brought Jim Schwartz in.
Yeah, I mean, they're number 1 in passing defense, number 1 in overall yards given up. And, I said several times on your show and in the offseason, I thought the hiring of Jim Schwartz back in whenever it was, January, February, it would have been the biggest move they made. And it's turned out to be. They've played at a much higher level than what I even expected. I was just, expecting them to be in the top half of the NFL, maybe top 10. And I felt with the offense we were expecting under Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, and so forth, that would be good enough. But this defense is really responsible for them being 9-5. That they have kept them in many of the games this year. For example, last week against the Bears, they basically held the Bears to 3 points. I mean, the Bears got 17, but one was a pick 6, all on the offense, and the other one was basically a pick 6, the return to the 1-yard line. I mean, the Bears, it took them 4 plays to get in from the 1, and they had 3 penalties called against the Browns defense to get them that 1 yard. So the defense has just been everything that you would want. The biggest thing is they haven't been able to take away the ball and have the turnovers that you might expect. That's really been the only flaw in the defense. But now they've had some injuries. To play last week the way they did with a rookie safety and an undrafted second-year safety, and without their captain, Anthony Walker, and a dinged-up, Jordan Elliott, Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, they just finding a way each week to get it done without Okoronkwo and some of these others. So I can't say enough about what Jim Schwartz has done. And, if they can continue to keep the game close, to give the offense enough time to figure out how to win it like they did last week, anything can happen.
This is kind of interesting, too. Through 15 weeks, Browns are 9-5, 5th most difficult strength of schedule in the NFL, and the Browns have the 3rd highest strength of victory of any team over 6 wins, 2nd highest of any of the teams currently holding a playoff seed in either conference. Those are both important as you get further down, and you could get really far down with the pack of teams that are at 8-6 and 7-7 in the AFC. But that strength of schedule, strength of victory are the tiebreakers after head-to-head and conference. So those are important things that the Browns have pretty high levels of and would win tiebreakers. Those are like the 3rd, 4th, or 5th tiebreakers when you look at them.
Yeah, that conference record is right now because if you have multiple teams tied with 10 wins or 11 wins, it's your conference, and they're 6-3 in the AFC. They're ahead of all the playoff contenders that they're battling with. They do have 3 AFC games remaining, obviously the Texans, the Jets, and the Bengals. So winning those games would almost make it unfathomable. Obviously winning all 3, they're in for sure. But even, you have a tiebreaker having the best record, in the conference. That goes a long way. And it could even, if they could win and the Ravens stumble against the 49ers and Dolphins or Steelers, you could end up edging out the Ravens and win the AFC North and still host a home playoff game. So anything could happen, but you think back, you beat the 49ers, you beat the Ravens, you beat the Bengals, you beat the Steelers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, teams, a lot of them that are still battling for the playoffs.
All right, before we go to break, Sam Weish from the NFL Report on the job Kevin Stefanski has done with the Browns this season.
And Mike, we've seen a lot of coaches pull their teams through adversity this season, especially going with the backup quarterback route. And I've got to give some praise to Kevin Stefanski. I think when we come down to what's going, the Coach of the Year award, everyone talks about that in a million different ways. You can justify it for a lot of coaches. Kevin Stefanski's got to be there. I mean, they've been there through 4 quarterbacks. They've lost their starting running back, their starting right tackle. They've dealt with a whole lot. And somehow he's been able to adapt from one quarterback, from the mobile quarterbacks to Joe Flacco, and to win ball games down the stretch. We've seen the Chief, David Njoku, who we're seeing right here, show up in big ways. Of course, the defense has been the constant, JP, but the fact that Kevin Stefanski, and we know before he got there, that building was always in disarray, has stabilized things, put his arm around it, stopped a lot of the leaks coming out of that building. The fact that he has been able to be a CEO and a good head coach at the same time in a season like this, I think, has been huge.
Fred, I can't argue with that. And I've been accused of being a Stefanski apologist or whatever you want to say. I think he's a really good head coach, and I think he's proven it.
Yeah, I mean, he's such an even keel guy, and I think that works against him sometimes. The media or the fans, they think that he's not, he drones on after a loss. We've been there. We're just doing the best we can, and the cliches. But he really has held this together. He almost seems to work his best in adversity. You think about the COVID year. He was coach of the year. That was his first year when almost all the practices were, everything was remote. And, you'd get 5 guys had COVID, can't play in the game. And they were just putting it together. Not just the Browns, but all teams. But doing that, they got to the playoffs. They won a playoff game. And this year, you could look at the same thing. It's almost a better job. We don't know how it's going to end up in these final 3 games. But with, like you said, 4 different quarterbacks and a plethora of injuries, not only, you could have went further. Your top 3 tackles. Then you go to the defense and the guys they've lost on defense. And so just finding a way to win and doing that 1-0 mantra that he preaches to get to the next week. So he has done a great job, and I wouldn't have any argument against him being the coach of the year. Obviously, there's other teams that have done a good job. So I think the 3 games left will still go a ways towards that, but no, he's done a great job. I think you're going to see he's going to get an extension. He's going to be here a long time. And the Browns haven't had stability. As much as people want to turn things over, with the bad play calls or this and that, there's something to be said about stability. We see that with Baltimore. You don't have to look beyond the division. With Baltimore, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, they've been successful. Part of it is because you're getting where you're building on what you have. We all know too well with Cleveland is that things go bad. You fire the coach, you start all over. Everybody wants their own people. It's a rebuild. And then 3-4 later, if it gets that far, you rinse and repeat and start all over again. So I like the idea of stability, and I think you have that here with the Browns.
Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we get a little bit more in depth on the upcoming game against the Texans. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Try C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Browns getting ready to head to Houston to play the Texans, trying to get their 10th win of the year. This from CBSSports.com. One thing we learned about each team in Week 15. For the Houston Texans, the opponent, C.J. Stroud needs to return as soon as possible. First 3 quarters against the Titans, who the Texans beat in overtime. Texans had 206 yards and scored 9 points. Case Keenum, 15 of 23, 120 yards, and interception, averaging 5.2 yards per attempt. So, Fred, C.J. Stroud, rookie quarterback from Ohio State, has played really well, still in concussion protocol as we speak. When you look at this game, what are some of the keys?
Well, I think that the Texans, when you went in this year, you thought you had a rebuilding team, that probably this would be a win for you. Now you're on the road on Christmas Eve, and I think obviously Stroud playing is a big deal. We all know Case Keenum well. I mean, a journeyman quarterback that can step in. The Browns had him here the year Baker Mayfield got hurt, and nobody knew Case Keenum better than Kevin Stefanski, and he chose to play Baker Mayfield every week over Case Keenum, who was a very high-paid backup because he felt like that was a better chance to win. And so I think he's a game manager at this point in his career. So Stroud's, changed the dynamic. They need this game big, not only for tiebreakers in the conference, but they're fighting for the division. I think they're tied with the Jacksonville Jaguars and maybe even the Colts for the top record, and they could win their division. So they really need this game very badly. And I'd be surprised if Stroud's not ready to go. So if he's ready to go, then it all, again, is on the defense. Jim Schwartz, come up with a plan to keep him from – he doesn't run as much as some of the quarterbacks, but he still is mobile, has good legs there. But they got to figure out a way to keep him, in check. Tank Dell, their top receiver, is out for the year. I'm not sure Nico Collins, who's the next man up, where he stands. I think he missed last week, but they still have a very good, offense, especially with Stroud, and you've seen you can't sleep on him. You get a lead, he still has brought him back. So I think it's on the defense to keep the Texans in check, and then I think Joe Flacco can figure out a way to move the ball and use Dustin Hopkins, get points, and win the game. But I think a lot of it is, again, on the defense and keeping Stroud and the Texans' offense in check.
So Texans have been taking care of the ball and have a pretty good turnover differential. It's one of the best in the league. I think they're tied for 4th. Again, we say this every week. Every week the Browns seem to turn the ball over and find a way to win. Eventually, that catches up to you, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I mean, it should have cost them last week the game. I mean, they've still not won the turnover battle now, I think, in 10 of their 14 games, and 2 or 3 of them they had the same. So it's really concerning. And so you would think Jim Schwartz, with his experience, would be able to maybe dial up and bait Stroud into making some mistakes. But that will be key. As you said, the Browns and the Texans are 15. The Browns are -7, 28th in the NFL in turnover ratio, where the Texans are +8 and they're 4th. So that's really the difference. You look statistically, these teams are about identical, but that turnover is really what will set it apart, and you can almost expect it to be, again, the deciding factor in this week's game.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
All right, Dave, but don't talk to you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well. Again, check him out, Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Always really good and insightful Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon straight ahead. Stay with us on Sports4CLE. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Pat McAfee from ESPN on the adversity the Browns have overcome this season to get to their 9-5 record.
It's like Joe Flacco, actually, AJ. Like he comes in off the couch. Drop him in off the couch. And it's like, did they just get better with this guy? And what was the percentage? 24%, 34%? I forget.
I think when Hansen said it on Red Zone, 25, 26, somewhere around 24, somewhere around there.
The percentage of salary cap on IR. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously.
They're banged up.
Both
sides of the ball.
If they were able to win this, Andrew Berry, GM, Cleveland Browns, Stefanski should be in some conversation.
Yeah.
Like, even if they make the play, they lose Chubb. Remember that? Chubb was their offense.
Forever ago.
He was their offense, and that was nasty. Then, obviously, Deshaun plays, doesn't play. He's out.
Conklin.
Who knows what they're going to be? Defense, offense, defense.
Both tackles.
Everywhere. It's like they lost. It was just another boom, 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 boom. And now we're heading into Week 16 with this Cleveland Browns team, and we're like, well, hey, the boys play tough.
Yeah, 9-5.
The boys play tight.
Good team.
What a move. What an organization. What a program, the Cleveland Browns. You know, because normally the Cleveland Browns have messed this whole thing up. That would be the history of the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
But not this year, AJ. Feels different over there.
And here's a look. It is 26% of the Browns' salary cap that is currently on the injured reserve list, 9-5 on the season. So here is the breakdown of some of it. You see Watson, Chubb, Conklin, Wills, Delpit, Grant, Phillips, Rodney McLeod. Those are all over $1 million. Watson at 19, over 19 million, Chubb over 14 million. Doesn't take into account, the other guys that have missed games, with Denzel Ward missing multiple games. That would be another big hit. So it gives you an idea. Again, it's 26% of the salary cap done for the year. And that doesn't take into account Okunrankwo, who probably won't be playing again this year. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily Network 216. Casey, that's just absurd, the amount of talent and salary cap that is on injured list. It's by far the most in the league.
Absolutely unreal. If someone would have showed that laundry list to you before the season, you were just punting on the year. The fact that they're sitting here at 9-5. I mean, I started an article with it last week. I said the 2023 Cleveland Browns overcome adversity for breakfast. It's the defining characteristic of who I believe this team to be and how we'll view them years from now when we look back. It's just whether it's the injuries or the self-inflicted wounds, it just seems they just keep rolling, and you hear words like next man up, but it's like they're really embodying that. They're really putting that into practice and coming out with wins. It's miraculous, and it's the front office, it's the coaching staff, it's every player on that team, it's every player on the practice squad, because they tell you, you need to practice like you're a starter. Well, on this team, you better practice like you're a starter because you just might be. It's miraculous what they've been able to do, and to get to be at 9-5 right here. It feels pretty surreal.
All right, here's another one for you. Joe Flacco will make his 4th consecutive start against the Texans. That's the most anybody has made. The first 3 games Deshaun Watson started. That was the only other time they've had a quarterback start 3 consecutive games 1, 2, and 3 of the year. how do you get into any type of offensive rhythm like that?
I've never seen anything like it. I don't, and it's a credit to them that they've been able to generate what they could on offense, just dropping a guy in off the couch and kind of treading water. But I do expect it to get better with the more reps because, as you've seen with some of his interceptions, they're miscommunication interceptions, which to be expected when you're throwing at younger players and they're not seeing it the way you are. Those kind of, that kind of thing will happen. And the only thing that you can get by, you just got to get more reps. The more reps you get, the more understanding you have of each other, and the less you should see that going forward. So 4 straight, it's a streak. Let's keep that going.
Dan Orlovsky from ESPN, this from NFL Live, talking about what he has seen from Joe Flacco and the Browns this year.
The play action pass gun stuff doesn't happen unless he builds in some easy completions for Joe. Because, the thing is, I love the fact that Stefanski's calling it because he knows that Joe's capable of it. But Joe's doing a really good job, and that's a huge part of this offense, is when Coach calls spot route or stick route, just get your completion. Make sure that the ball gets out of your hands. And then, Mina, this is kind of what you talked about. He's doing a really good job of throwing the football on the run. I understand that he's not Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, but throwing while on the move is something that I guess I'm a little bit surprised that he's doing it this well right now.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, when he's extending, David Njoku, the Browns tight end, he is getting open on these scramble girls, getting yards after the catch. They have something going on with him and Flacco that I think is pretty potent.
I love it. He's 38 years old. I mean, come on.
They're just doing a good job of I think Stefanski's got a great feel for what he can and can't do. I say this all the time, too. Exactly. As a quarterback, when the coach calls completion plays, you got to take them. And because that's telling him, Coach called a shot. Coach called a shot at some point because you can keep kind of that balance and efficiency on offense.
And again, that's a quarterback's perspective of why you take the completions when they're there.
It's also because of their inability to run right now. It's the extension of the run game. It's an easy way to stay up with the sticks, just taking those easy completions, and it does open things up. But Orlovsky pointed something out just now it's true. He's been much more athletic than I gave him credit for. There's been several times he's rolled to his right where it's like a, oh, no, yes type moment where he's rolling out and he throws it back in towards the boundary and finds somebody. He's seeing it well, and I didn't see that coming. I didn't think that was going to be part of his game when he came off the couch. I didn't think we'd see a mobile Joe Flacco.
Well, the other thing that's happened is they alluded to David Njoku. They've kind of unlocked David Njoku. Last 2 games, this is from Browns PFF tweeting this out, 16 receptions, 195 yards. That's first among tight ends, and 3 touchdowns. Former NFL offensive lineman Brian Baldinger with an analysis on Flacco's pass to Njoku that put the Browns in a critical field goal range.
And then you get this. It's a 6-man pressure. It's man coverage. Well, it's supposed to be. Somebody's got to pick up Njoku, and all Flacco's got to do is just throw it off his back foot and flick it right there. And they get themselves into field goal range. Oh, they're going crazy in the dog pound. It's been a while. You watch Flacco right here, and look here they come. 6-man pressure. They're all coming. All right? Little fake, like they're blitzing, then they come. And they're coming all after Joe. And he just stands in there. He just got to wait a flick. Who's got Njoku? There it is. What a factor Njoku has been all season long. And the Brownies just keep on winning. And the feeling? Oh, it's better than a holiday feeling. Did everybody get that on camera? Everybody?
And Casey, that when you look at it from behind the quarterback, that's almost an extension of the screen game. Let the offensive lineman come in because we're going to have trouble blocking them with 4 backups anyway, and then create some space for Njoku and the running backs.
Yeah, and it's a credit to him, too, because he's such a good blocker. They have to keep people in, and it's usually a linebacker. In that case, you saw a defensive lineman have to leak out, and there was no chance as long as he clears that level. Joe just threw up a layup, off his back foot. And I just feel so good for David. It's crazy because this is his 7th year in the league, and it really doesn't feel like it, like he's been here that long, but he's only 27 years old. But to see him finally reach his full potential, you just got to feel good for him. And I was thinking about it the other day. In 2020, when they kind of went away from him and brought Austin Hooper in and made him the secondary tight end, he had to learn to block. Up until that point, he had not been a blocker, and he did. He did. And to the point now where if you were naming the most complete tight ends in the league, I think he's in the top 2. I think he's just behind George Kittle on that. And it's just, you can't take him off the field. He's a plus in the passing game. They're starting to unlock him in the red zone. It's just really cool to see him at this level. And I think you're going to see a strong finish to this season.
All right, so we've alluded to this. We've talked around it. You had 4 non-starting offensive line. I don't even call them backups because some of them they were on the street at the start of the year. Teller was the only starter you had on the field. You might get Posick back. How do you? Is that as simple as why the run game has struggled, or is it even deeper than that? I mean, how do you get the run game going? I'm talking around it. How do you get the run game going at least to a thing where it's a threat? Like right now, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm covering Amari Cooper, David Njoku, and saying, all right, guys, what are you doing? What else? How are you going to beat me if I try to take those 2 guys away from your passing game?
Yeah, I think that's the approach every defensive coordinator is going to take until the Browns can show them something in the run game. And it's frustrating, but like when you're dealing with, like you said, and being pretty kind, 4 backup offensive linemen out there at a single time, it's, how do they get it going? How creative can they be? What kind of different looks can they show? Because they're still operating their play action game, even with no running game, which I think is admirable, and even out of the gun, which is something until the season you hadn't even seen yet. So they have to figure it out. They have to figure out a way to stay up with the sticks, and it doesn't have to be gargantuan. When you're looking at, can you get 3.5 yards, 4 yards, a carry? Because I think what was 18 for 29 yards on Sunday. That's anemic, man. That's something that you can't win like that long term, and that's going to be tough on the road to try to win like that.
1.6 yards per carry, and again, it was. You're just not there's not much running room. There's not much explosion. It's tough. Eventually, if you can't run the football, they're going to send waves at your 38-year-old quarterback.
Yeah, and that's the reason the screen game's so important, because you can kind of invite some of that pressure in and offset it by getting the ball out. They're going to have to use a lot more of that, a lot of quick game, a lot of screen action, and until they can get it going. And I'm not so sure they're going to be able to until they get some of these guys back. And we really don't know if they're going to get some of these guys back. We don't know if Bitonio is going to be able to go this week, next week, the week after even, He tweaked something in pregame and then re-aggravated it. So until we start seeing injury reports, we really have no idea what we're looking at. And then you even had your backup center go out of this game. It's truly astounding, that next man up mentality that they have to have at this point. If not, they might as well just put up a white flag, and they look like they're nowhere close to doing that.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, take an interesting look at the AFC playoff picture via quarterback. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, as well as Network 216. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, I'm ecstatic on a Victory Monday. One thing I wanted to touch base on is all the quarterbacks in Cleveland in past years have all these balls batted down at the line. And Joe Flacco, with the exception of the little screen pass that he tried the other day, I can't recall one ball that's been batted down to Joe Flacco's. And then initially I'm thinking, okay, it's because he's 6'6". And then I'm watching a replay and he's dropping down three-quarter, dropping down sidearm, the way he moves in the pocket. This guy's experience, along with his height, his arm strength, his accuracy, you're always one play away from something big happening with him. And, man, he's got us excited. What's your guys' take on all these batted balls in the past and not seeing them now? You guys take care. Have a great week.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Casey, I think there's an element where he kind of senses where pressure's coming from, moves around very it's not huge movement, very subtly in the pocket and finds his passing lanes. The other thing is, that's why, nobody wants to see the Browns come playoff time, assuming they make the playoffs. And there are scenarios where they could clinch if they beat the Texans. They need some help, but they could clinch as early as this week. They got a puncher's chance against anybody because of Flacco.
Yeah. It's when we talk about batted balls in specific, it's not always height. If you look around the league leaders are like Burrow, Herbert. These guys are have been in the top 10 every year, and a lot of it's volume of passing. But even Flacco himself, in 2018, his last year as the starter in Baltimore, he led the league in batted down balls. But you said it. It's the subtle movements in the pocket. You'll see the adjustments. He'll drift slightly to the right or slightly to the left. He'll find his passing lanes, and that's what it all comes down to. And if you look around this AFC, there's no unbeatable teams, and if you got a steady hand at quarterback who can strike in big plays at key moments, you will have a puncher's chance as long as his defense keeps coming to play. Now, they have a tougher task this weekend because they haven't been, as proficient on the road, obviously. So this will be a big test this week to see if this defense can stand up on the road and give the offense that same kind of chance that they were able to give them this past Sunday against Chicago.
Well, the other thing is there's still regular season games remaining, and the one thing is it has been injury city in the NFL, so we'll see. Take a look at this. This is kind of interesting. Starting quarterbacks in the AFC playoff picture. So the divisional leaders, Jackson, Tua, Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence. Hey, they all have their starting quarterbacks. What do you know? The wild card, Joe Flacco, Jake Browning, and Gardner Minshew. All are backups. In the hunt, you've got C.J. Stroud, a rookie. The lone kind of outlier on that one, Josh Allen, Mason Rudolph. Man, they're getting desperate in Pittsburgh. And then Russell Wilson, they started off in big hole and got back in it. But it's really interesting. I think it goes to reinforce how important the quarterback position is in the NFL. It's no mistake that all the division leaders have their starting quarterback and have.
Well, let's start with this. They're down bad in Pittsburgh, and you love to see it. It's them chanting for Mason Rudolph. That made my weekend. Be careful what you wish for, Pittsburgh. You're going to get it this weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not rocket science. Keep your starting quarterback healthy, and you're going to have a much better chance to succeed in this league. And you look at it when you see the top 4 seeds, and then you look at everybody that's in the hunt. But even with those top 4 seeds, you look at them. Every team has a weakness. I think if anything, you don't want to play Miami in Miami. But if you look at that list, you roll in there with Joe Flacco playing at his best, you have a chance against any of those teams. And you start looking at the other teams that are in the hunt, and I think you'd feel better with Joe Flacco than you would Gardner Minshew, or Jake Browning. I don't know. I feel good about where they're at right now.
So the other thing is that they've had a lot of guys step up. Take a look at Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah against the run. These are all qualifying linebackers. He is first in average depth of tackle, so that leads to like tackle per loss type of things at 0.9. So he's tackling somebody before they gain a yard on average. First in run stop percentage, almost 13%. He's also 10th in pass rush win rate, and he's tied for 3rd in tackles for loss. And again, that's a guy that he's not playing 100% of snaps.
Yeah. It just makes me wonder if he could have done this last year had they had a professional defensive tackle room. Because we were in here just every day we talked about it, like they got to get someone in here. Now they have people up front keeping him clean. He is a pure difference maker. And, when you look at tackle numbers, those can be misleading because we could think back to someone like Joe Schobert, who's led the league in tackles, but those tackles come 5-7 yards down the field, as opposed to someone like JOK, who's stopping the ball at the line of scrimmage, making impact plays. And I think he's just scratching the surface of what he could be. And I think the accolades are going to follow. I think you're looking at someone who should make the Pro Bowl this year and maybe even get consideration for All-Pro.
You look at it, there were guys, young guys that were getting opportunities who showed up and made plays. Alex Wright comes to mind. The safeties, D'Anthony Bell, Ronnie Hickman. I mean, those are rookie, Hickman, rookie undrafted. D'Anthony Bell was an undrafted rookie when he was signed. So, again, they're having all levels, both sides of the ball are preparing guys to step in and play. Is it because the defense isn't as complicated as it was in the past?
That has to have some part to do with it, especially up front. You're just expected to go be aggressive, go hunt, not a lot of thinking. And then, so that plays to a lot of these guys' athletic strength and just let them be aggressive. But on the back end, to play safety in this league, I don't care what scheme you're in, that is complicated. And to see two undrafted free agents step in there and hold their own. I mean, they were both near the top of the league in PFF grading this week, and there at no point during the game did you look at them as a weak link. And I think that just speaks to their preparation and the preparation of the defensive back coaches and having them ready to play. Because if you think back to 2 weeks ago, Hickman didn't find out he was starting till an hour before the game when Thornhill was ruled out during pregame. Stepped right in. I just think that's the mentality that's echoing through the building of next man up and prepare like a starter, and you're seeing the fruitions of it on the field.
It'll be a different challenge. The passing game for the Houston Texans, assuming it's C.J. Stroud, is pretty proficient. So it'll be a challenge this week for sure. Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily Network 216, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break, get a little talk about Kevin Stefanski, and then dive in deeper with the Texans coming up. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and Network 216. So the Hail Mary play ended the game. Bears almost came up with it. It ended up as an interception. For those of you wondering how Kevin Stefanski was dealing with that final play, take a look at this and listen.
5 seconds remaining in the game. Throwing deep. Hail Mary. End zone. Deflected. Tipped and intercepted. Almost caught.
Holy.
Yeah, Casey, that was a little too close for comfort, even for Coach there.
Yeah, that was all of us. I think that was every Browns fan watching that play. Me and Jacob Roach were actually doing a live game watch along on the Pro Sports Fan app, and I guarantee you'd have had to use some bleeps because you experienced so much in that 5-second clip. The anxiety of the play, the excitement of actually batting the ball down, to the despair of it landed on a Bears player, to the elation of him hitting it up into a player's hands. It was too much in a short period of time, and you'll take any win you can get, any way you can get them. But if you can not do that to me again this year, that'd be much appreciated. I'm going to die sooner now.
And again, I believe it was Hickman who did try to bat it to the ground, but unfortunately he batted it on top of Darnell Mooney, and then he kicked it up. This surprised me. I won't lie. This is from Pro Football Talk tweeting this out. Kevin Stefanski is the first Browns head coach with 2 winning seasons since Marty Schottenheimer. Schottenheimer was fired back in 1988 after a wild card loss to the Houston Oilers. That was the first year I was covering the Browns. But Kevin Stefanski, with the 9 wins, is guaranteed he will have a second winning season. It's been the 80s since a Browns head coach has had 2 winning seasons. So anybody that's trying to chase the coach out of town, please stop.
I don't know what else they need to see, Dave. I don't know. If we go through all the litany of injuries, the 4 quarterbacks, 9-5. And I was surprised by that stat, too. When I first read it, I was like,
We had to go back
Did
and
Bill-
look. We went back and looked through Pro Football Reference to make sure.
Yeah, that's crazy since Marty Ball. You know what I mean? It's been a minute, and you've been chasing this consistency, and you've been waiting to see the culture finally change. And you know, if you're a Browns fan, you've stuck it out this long. Congratulations, because you've made it. We're here now. You know, the culture has finally shifted, and I think that anyone trying to chase the coach out of town, I don't think there's anything they could be shown at this point that would change their minds. Their feet are dug in.
You're right.
This is the right guy for the job.
Well, and you know, the ironic thing is, Murray Schottenheimer got fired after a playoff loss at home, and he didn't have a losing season. He had no losing seasons, and they fired the head coach. Right now that seems just bizarre. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk, who, you know, that was that tweet. He talked about how he defines Coach of the Year in the NFL.
It is the coach whose team best exceeds the generally accepted expectations entering the season. You expect them to be a Super Bowl contender. They are a Super Bowl contender. You're not Coach of the Year. That's why Bill Belichick, I think, only ever got it the year that they went undefeated. But the sweet spot is new coach, new team, non-playoff team becomes playoff team. That's how you get in the conversation. Shane Steichen of the Colts, D'Amico Ryans of the Texans, Kevin Stefanski a few years ago with the Cleveland Browns, his first year, 2020, turned around a non-playoff team, took them to the top of the stack. And Stefanski languishing at 15-1, down there with Zach Taylor behind John Harbaugh. There's only one guy on that graphic who's had 4 starting quarterbacks this year, and it's Stefanski. I don't know whether it's because he's won one or whether we don't expect much out of the Browns. The Browns is the Browns. I don't get it. His odds should be better.
And Casey, you're starting to see some of the national people, because they're starting to hear 26% of the salary cap is on. They're starting to get it hammered home how beat up this team is, and they're still 9-5.
Yeah, place your bets now. That's what I would say. Get your money in now, because those odds are going to increase. But yeah, if you just look at the year you won it in 2020, you know, like that was miraculous. You didn't really have an off season because of COVID. Didn't really get to know your team, and he was still able to do what he was able to do. But I think this season makes that pale in comparison. I think that the adversity that they've been placed in, and just the things that have been thrown at him at a weekly basis, and they've been able to navigate and still win. You know, you're at 9-5. This is, with what's happened, I don't think there's a close second in my opinion. And yeah, the fact that he's tied with Zach Taylor, I think that's crazy to me. It's no one, and there's been teams that have had adversity, no doubt. Mm-hmm. No one's overcame as much as the Browns have, and that's indicative of the coach, in my opinion.
All right, so Texans beat up last week. Case Keenum was their quarterback. C.J. Stroud still in concussion protocol early in the week, so we'll see. They were missing Will Anderson, their really talented defensive edge rusher. They were missing some of their top receivers. If you're Jim Schwartz, C.J. Stroud, Case Keenum, what do you expect to see from the Browns defense relative to the Houston Texans offense?
When I look at the two quarterbacks, I think it comes down to just coverage preference, whether you're going to run more zone or more man. If you know you're facing Keenum, I think you just run more man, try to stifle things at the line of scrimmage. But if it's going to be Stroud, I think you end up trying to disguise things and go into more zone, try to confuse them, cause a little hesitancy. But no matter who the quarterback is, the recipe's still the same. Get pressure up front and get after it. If you look at what they were able to do Sunday against Justin Fields, and that didn't result in the sacks that you would like to see, but you look between Miles and Za'Darius, there were 18 pressures. That's the recipe right there. Speed everything up and try to force turnovers, because to win on the road, you're going to have to make some big plays and force some of those turnovers. And the defense, they know that. They know they got to get the ball back to their offense, give them as many opportunities as possible, because that's what it took last Sunday. And it's, until further notice, that's got to be the recipe.
What does it look like offensively? Texans defense is pretty good, so you're probably going to struggle to run the ball again.
Yeah, Joe Flacco throwing it 45 times. I think that's what it is. I think you're going to see a lot of the short game to compensate for the run. I think you're going to see a lot more David Njoku. I just think a lot of screen game, a lot of stuff that we talked about earlier, a lot of hitting the layups, hit the easy stuff, and try to scheme things open late, like the Marquise Goodwin shot. we've been waiting to see that all year, and we finally see it to come to fruition. I think that's something that becomes more regular week by week as those two get used to each other. So, ball control, for the love of God, try not to turn it over, because that's the only way teams seem to be scoring on you as of late. But as we know, for this Browns team, it's part of it's all baked in. I think they're going to have one or two. Just got to hope that they're not costly and then deep in your own end.
And the other thing is, I would assume this is going to have kind of a playoff feel to it. The Texans, if they can find a way to get a win, they get a leg up, and this could be one of those tiebreaker games if the Texans aren't able to win the division. So it counts as two almost.
Yeah, you're going to be able to feel it. It's going to be a heavy game. And the Texans, you got to think they're playing with house money because no one expected them to compete this year. So those fans are going to be juiced up. You're walking into their place. They're way more competitive than they thought they'd be. They'll probably be a little more juiced up if C.J. Stroud's gone, because that's their new hope, And so the environment will be raucous to play down there, and it'll have that playoff feel, which only hardens you for the postseason when you get to it. And the Browns have found themselves in that position a couple of times. Just think back to the Jacksonville game, definitely had a playoff atmosphere. So just keep kind of rack these experiences up so that they pay dividends when you get into January.
Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me. Casey
Kinnamon, make sure you check him out, Dog Pound Daily, as well as Network 216. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.